So, yeah, I was checking out your music, and I really like the singles "I Recognize Nothing" and "Wolves." Those are two
Mm.
really good tracks, man.
Which I think are like possibly the most two different sounding songs on that record.
They kind of stick
So
out, huh?
that's so cool, man. Yeah, yeah. I like having albums that are like kind of a surprise in a way that's not exactly what you think each song will go to. I mean, do you feel that way too? Like with albums, do you like stuff that's like you can depend on, or are you okay with like an artist that kind of like changes stuff up a bit or something?
You got to keep it interesting, no doubt about it. And that's
Mm.
certainly what you did. Yeah, so I've got so many questions to ask you. You have a very interesting story, and but there's a lot of places we could go. But first things first, tell me where you grew up.
I grew up and I still live in Toronto, Canada. It's it's kind of like for Canada, like that's like as big a city as it gets. But I mean, for North America, I think Toronto is like fourth or fifth biggest city. Sometimes we beat Chicago,
Oh
but
yeah,
then it's sometimes Chicago beats us. It's kind of like hockey or something, or maybe a baseball or something. But like the population kind of goes back and forth. Where like Toronto is like a pretty big metropolis and big deal. So it's kind of weird to grow up in such a big place, I suppose. But
hmm
at the same time, I mean, my grandparents came from all over different places in Europe. I mean, we got Scotland, we got Wales, but then we got Ukraine, we got Italy. So I think as immigration was spreading between, New York or like Canada, uh, they had these ideas of like, which one do you choose? And I think maybe they probably just got like good pamphlets for Canada. Maybe that's what it was, right? Like, hey, come to Canada. We'll give you like even better deal than New York's offering you or something. But
right.
so yeah, I think they came to Toronto in the like early 1900s, and they no one really left. We're all there.
Wow, wow. So deep roots into Toronto.
Hmm.
And what were your musical influences growing up?
So when I really got into music. I mean, my parents were actually both music teachers. They love big band sound, they love jazz. So there was that in the house, which I think I appreciate more now than I did when I was a kid, as you could probably imagine.
Oh yeah.
But when I think I got really interested in music, my first like real kind of like curiosity peaked with gangster rap from Los Angeles. So my buddy Mike, and this was in grade six, and I think that the US system is similar to Canada where we had like grade six, I think you're about 11, 12, or
About
something
11,
like that.
12. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think it's the same, right? So one day my buddy Mike, like he rocks up with a Walkman, and we had like the split earphones, and he played me Two Life Crew and he played me NWA.
Oh yeah.
And this was literally like on the kind of school ground, and he had these tapes which were like forbidden. You know what I mean? It was like when music was really actually still dangerous,
Right.
and I just was so impressed by the whole thing. So for I think the first 3 years, I really loved hip hop. I loved rap, Cypress Hill, House of Pain, obviously like Two Live Crew, NWA. Like I was really like into sort of rap music. And when I got to junior high school, which I guess grade seven, eight, nine, that kind of area, like grunge was a big deal. So like then I really got to like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and then I kind of hit Green Day, which was a massive deal for me in about grade nine, 10. Green Day lasted for decades. And I got into like punk rock music from the East Bay, Northern California punk rock music, Rancid, then the real kind of like Mr. T experience, kind of like these sort of bands that were really melodic,
Mm-hmm.
but really they were alternative, but they had great melodies,
Oh, for sure.
great songwriters, and I think music that people in the future will still find Do you know what I mean? Like
Oh, yeah.
later, like with the streaming or whatever, they'll come back to it. So yeah, then I got into punk rock for like a good solid minute, and through punk rock, you know, you kind of find like different songwriting. I was just in love with songs and songwriting, and kind of went through like you know, kind of alt country and where I am now, which is a mixture of everything. I just love everything.
Right, right. What was it about punk rock that spoke to you?
I think that it's the same thing that speaks to me today about something that I truly love, which is like sincerity, honesty, something that feels like there's someone shedding a part of their soul, and they know that most people won't really feel comfortable in that, but uh, they don't know the audience, because the audience is really reluctant to sort of say to them sometimes how much that affects them. So I think that that's kind of like that was really like present in a lot of real punk rock music.
Hmm.
I don't want to say real meaning like elitist or something, but I think that like the real vibe of like the original punk rock music that still continues today was something that, yeah, it's like that really speaks to your soul and rips you apart sometimes. So I feel that continues today with like, I mean, different types of music as well. It's not just like punk rock, but yeah, it's stuck with me forever.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And so, during which phase was it? Maybe the hip hop, the punk rock, or where was it in your musical history where you decided, you know what, you had that aha moment, and this is me. I'm going to be a musician. When did it click?
Mm, right away. So when I was 12, 13. Again, my parents were music teachers, so I was lucky in the way that things work in Canada, which is a bit different than the United States, is that Canada, you know, we have a we have a different system here. Like when people pay taxes a little more, and
Hmm.
because we have a smaller population, those tax dollars kind of like get sort of spread out a little bit differently. So there's music programs in Canada that are a little better, meaning like the students show up. It doesn't matter how much money their parents have. It doesn't matter at all, because there's like an instrument that could cost $1,000 that the student could for free, for the sake of public education, they could use for their studies for that term.
Wow.
And so the schools, they're not rich schools, but they have like a budget, which is just, again, it's a budget, so they can buy instruments. And so my father, who was a music teacher, he had access to these instruments, and he could bring them home on the summer break. I mean, again, this was like kind of like in the 90s, where like there wasn't so many checks and balances about what people were taking and bringing back through the school system.
Right.
And so, yeah, every summer in my basement, there was guitar amps and there was a PA, and it did not take long to find a couple friends that wanted to come over and just make some serious noise in my basement. And
And
yeah,
and
for
your
me,
parents being music
yeah,
teachers, I mean, they were cool, right? They weren't giving you a hard time.
no, they were pretty cool about it. I mean, I think that again, I mean, I guess maybe they wish their kids would probably get into big band sound. It would be a lot quieter and more like traditional. But I don't know if they really expected their kids to totally embrace the punk grunge scene of the like mid to late '90s, which was like get as loud as you can get.
And so from there, you're kind of playing, jamming with your friends. And
Yeah.
so, at what point do you say, okay, like this is something I want to pursue for real, for real?
Honestly, right away, because when I started to learn how to play guitar, which I had about 6 months of lessons, and the cool thing was, and this is what I think that every teacher, whether it's private or whatever, if they're teaching an instrument to a student or someone who wants to learn, you know what I mean? Like, I think they really should be teaching an instrument to someone that like they kind of go along with whatever the student wants to learn. So while I had this guitar teacher for 6 months, very nice guy named Rich. I still remember his name today. He did teach me some Hendrix songs, which I'll be honest, when I was like 12, 13, I mean, Hendrix I knew was like this cool, iconic guy, like a Led Zeppelin, Stones kind of forever eternalized. But I was just like, teach me their Nirvana songs. You know what I mean? Like, give me Come As You Are. I don't. So, we learned Hey Joe, we learned some songs like that, but then I was just like, come on, get to the stuff I'm really listening to. Yeah, I think that immediately, as soon as I started to learn how to play these chords, I wrote my own songs. And that I did it from the age I was 14. Some of that music, embarrassingly, is still available. There are friends of mine in Toronto that still think that, tapes I made when I was 15 are the best music I ever made. And of course, they're wrong, but nostalgia is a weird thing.
It is. It is. But I'm sure you impressed them. I mean, you're the same age as them, and there you are playing guitar, writing music, and I'm sure they're impressed. I mean, how many people do they know at that age with the ability to write music?
It's true. I mean, it kind of came to me as fast as, as fast as learning the instrument itself. There was no gap. It was just like learn these few songs, and then all of a sudden you're writing songs yourself, and it was just like instant.
Wow. Wow, that's great. So then you kind of continue playing in bands. Where do you go from there?
So I think like this is kind of like late '90s, and we did, and it's like the kind of like technology, not technology, but sort of like formats changed, right? So you like started with tapes in the mid '90s. Everyone had like a glorified demo tape that was kind of like the demo tape, but it was basically like their release.
Right.
So I played in this little three-piece punk band that sounded kind of like real East Bay California punk rock. Like, we really loved Green Day, we really loved the Lookout Records style, and we were called the Stiffs, and we had three tapes, and they came out in about a 18-month period. Fast songs, fast over, fast output. And then we put one CD out, and then 2000 rolled around.
Hmm.
And then I think at that point, everything kind of was changing, like with like punk rock music. It was like the alternative scene was getting way more interested, like heavier music, hardcore,
Hmm.
um, which is like, I think it's such a natural progression of like people's music interests in general. They want to go up and down, yin yang. And so we kind of were also getting into like a bit more indie rock, and so it's kind of this like weird divide between like indie punk kind of like sound. And so then we changed the band name to a band called Dead Letter Department, which embarrassingly there's even more stuff online for this band. And but this was kind of the true like indie punk sound. It was kind of like somewhere between like Jawbreaker and like, I don't even know, like just something like that. And then when that kind of ended in 2005, I, as you normally would, I mean, you take a sort of moment back and think like, do I still want to pursue music? Am I just enjoying music as like, people enjoy a lot of things. They enjoy having a club that plays chess. They enjoy a knitting, everything, a reading club. Do I just want to do it like that?
Right.
And I always had these songs that I was writing since day one that were not rock. They were not punk at all. And I felt like I kind of wanted to explore really getting into this sound of, was in my head. And so it kind of led to inevitably this like folk sort of project, which I'm doing now.
Hmm. That's interesting. So you had songs that were not rock, and so was it kind of a hard transition to move from rock to more of a folk sound, or it was just this natural thing that you had always been wanting to do?
It's always something I wanted to do, but the hard part is like convincing your friends and followers that have been like with you since day one that you're going to go a total U-turn. and you're going to go like a 180 on something. And I think that's kind of where like punk, I would say even hip hop and punk rock are very similar in a way. Like they sound incredibly different, but like the message is kind of the same. It's like the only two genres of music where like you're allowed to be as honest as you want. And
Right.
like I've always kind of like that those two genres of music hit me when I was a kid, like a teenager, and well, I don't listen to as much hip hop or punk rock as I probably should, or like would like, or feel like I should listen to. Like the message of that stuff is like it's like in my DNA now, right? So I always felt like I wanted to do something that I didn't care if anybody liked, and it's possibly the most truest form to being like an artist
Hmm.
that I know, and that's where I feel at times like I relate to that term as like an artist. Like I don't care if they like it or not, but I have this like magnet level strength to do it, and so yeah, that feeling has never left me, and therefore it's like turning in or going from like this loud sound into a quieter, folky thing. Um, I didn't know if anyone would like it at all, but I was going to do it.
Right. Did you have some resistance? I mean, I'm sure maybe you were second guessing, or maybe one of your close friends, or say, hey, what's up with this folk stuff? I mean, you're a rock guy. What's up?
No, well, maybe they said that, but the way that I feel like I kind of operate, Jeff, honestly, is like I can't. It's never loud enough to hear it. Do you know what I mean? It's just like it's like you just go, and you correct the mistakes as you go along, and you don't ask permission. And again, going back to that early punk rock and hip hop stuff, like I feel like that's just like too much a part of who I am now to like not ask this permission to do stuff. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it could have been like the first couple shows or that first couple releases, like nobody cared, and you'd have to ask yourself why you're doing this. Like, why are you wasting these people time like coming out to see you play if nobody connects with it? And I think that I don't know, I was just so sort of confident in a way that like at least it was for somebody, and here I am 6 years later doing it still, so I guess it's for somebody.
Well, that says a lot. That says a lot. And one thing that I immediately grabbed onto when I checked out your YouTube is that you did 500 shows in 20 countries in 2 years.
I think that might be right, actually, like it. And
That's prolific, man. How do you do that?
again, it's that same like magnet force that kind of like I would say like the first year. So I had this job in Toronto for about 2 or 3 years while I was sort of kicking off this like solo thing. And I didn't have any songs recorded or anything, but I was like, working kind of like 5 days a week, 10 to 6. And it was an okay job, but I mean, it was like in the wine industry. And I was like, it was one of those things that you do, and you do it well, and you show up every day. I was never sick. I took it seriously because other people were giving me a paycheck. And even though I felt like an artist that had this voice that I needed to scream about stuff, I still just did it. And over time at that job, when I started to put together this like first grouping of songs, you know, I would kind of start asking them, is it okay if I just take my vacation time and I do like some shows in other parts of Canada or something like that? And then it kind of got to a point where I was like, is it okay if I just take like a month off, and you don't have to pay me. Just please keep my job. I'll
Yeah.
do it the worst month of the year. I'll go in January when no one's coming to give us business, and you don't have to pay me. I'll just do it. And that turned into like about 4 months a year, and then it turned into like basically. I mean, I kind of had this idea where I'm gonna quit this job and just take a year and try to do music full time.
Right.
and they beat me to it. The company, not because they hired me, but the company closed. The whole thing it went bankrupt.
Right on
And
time.
exactly, yeah. So I think that it just, I don't know, it's kind of like it wasn't a sign. It wasn't the spiritual sort of thing you think. It was just like, it was a big fat arrow that said to me, if you want to do this, do it right now and go this direction. And I thought financially I'd maybe get 6 months and then I have to get a job. And I've been doing it 6 years.
Wow. Wow. So you thought it would last 6 months, and here it is 6 years. So what is the secret to that, to being a self-sustained artist, that, you've been able to support yourself and nonstop? And how does one do that? I'm sure there's so many people that are listening to this podcast saying, how can I do that?
I think it's playing the long game. It's really believing in yourself like an enormous amount and realizing that it's like it, it's kind of being self-aware too. It's like your realistic expectations about who might like your music. Like, because for me, like, and I gotta be honest, like, I'm not, and I have no like I take no ill blood to anybody who writes songs who wants to make money from this. I don't have any like negative feelings towards this. If you want to go to Nashville and co-write 5 days a week and hopefully getting a hit on the radio, I understand your livelihood. You have kids, you have a mortgage. I don't have anything against that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to be like kind of real with who I am, and like as a songwriter, like the only thing that gets me out of bed every day is this thing that naturally has hit me since I was 14, which is like, this is the song I want to write. This is how I want to sing it. And if you like it, amazing. If you don't like it, it's okay that it's not for you.
Right.
So I think that when you kind of like realize early on, like what your priorities are, it kind of makes it a bit easier to clear up how you do it. And so that's the artistic side of me. That's the side that makes albums, and this stuff is forever. And it's kind of in a weird way how I can still play the songs from the first EP that I put out in 2011 that, that's been 7 years, and most musicians and most bands would be like, I can't play stuff from that long ago. And I could play all of those songs in tonight and still connect to them. So it's this kind of like, I suppose, a commitment to the song that you're able to like put on tape or recording, is that like it's gone through your own process of like, if this is good enough for you.
Right.
And if it's good enough for you, it should last forever in a way.
Would you say there's a truth to writing a song for you, without regard of what's going to happen, the success of the song, but it's a song and a production that you like, that you love? Would you say that if you stick to that's a strong way to connect to the audience, that they could feel?
I think that you should write, if you're a songwriter, you should write songs in that fashion. But if you want to connect in a live way, and you do have songs that as a performer connect with people, you'd be kind of doing a disservice to not align those performances with songs are going to connect. I mean, the funny thing is, I think about putting out a collection of songs, is that as a songwriter, and again, I've done this a few times now, like I've kind of done the punk Stiffs tapes, I've done the like few Dead Letter Department CDs, and I've done 3 Rob Moir full lengths and 1 EP, so 4, I guess, in total. So that's kind of at least 50 songs, at least in my own solo project.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not one song that I would play on any night that would just be for me. I might make a couple songs on the album that I think are for everyone, and it turns out no one is really connecting with that song, but I'm glad it's there. But
Right.
in the performance sake, I think it'd be a disservice to your own self to not play the songs that connect with people. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Oh, completely. No, it does make sense. And so when you embark on, I mean, did you say ahead of time before you did the 500 show stretch, I'm going to do 500 shows? Or did you say, you know what, I'm going to play as many gigs as I can do over the next couple of years?
Well, I think at this point now, like I kind of look at it like, so I've been doing this. So we're in like November, and come I think it's like April 16, or in that first second week of April, that's when I have absolutely the last time I had any income that was not from just touring revenue from album merch or whatever, right? So coming up to that April in about 5 months will be 6 years solid.
Wow.
And so in that time, like I think the first year that I was like totally, I have no job. I think I did like 220 shows.
Wow.
And then the second year, I think I did 204 shows. And then the third year, I think it was like down to like 174 or something.
Hmm.
And now that I'm kind of creeping up in the six year, I think it kind of hovers around this like 170, 160 per year. So I might be up to like 700 or something like that shows with this. But the funny thing is that like there are so many of these shows where they're like private in someone's living room with like 10 people. And I count that as a show. If there's like 10 people, it's a show.
That's a show. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, uh, but I looked at it like, okay, this is a job now. I mean, I don't think I'm like fundamentally lazy at all. You know what I mean? I look at it like, okay, my friends have jobs. They work like 48 weeks a year, and that's okay. 48 times five, you can kind of figure out like maybe we should probably just do as many shows as they're working a normal job. Like the travel obviously takes a toll. You got to be moving for sometimes a few hundred kilometers a day, but like at the end of it, it's like you're playing music, you're singing songs. I mean, it's rough out there. It will crush your soul
Oh, yeah.
sometimes, but then it will build you up like a transformer at the same time. And so the ratio is good. If you want to do 200 shows a year, 180, I mean, you'll make a living, and you'll make people that want to come back and see you again. And the complaints that maybe some artists have about doing that, I don't think they're valid. I think that I know what it's like to have a real job, and I know what it's like to work the same hours doing something it's just mechanical, or like you don't love it.
Right.
And I just never complain about what I do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
That's awesome. That is awesome. So would you say that, I mean, what would you say career wise, the differences between what you know now versus what you knew before going on a stretch like this?
man, I feel that the weird answer to this is
Yeah.
that every year this kind of industry changes, and it's like you think you know, but you know nothing. And there are some like things. Well, I guess like when I first started thinking about music as being like something you could do like as a job, I think I had this naive idea that you would just like wake up and play music and write music and like be around other musicians and collaborate, and it was just nothing but a cloud of enjoyment creativity wise. Like, and realistically, it's like there's so much admin, there's so much like organization, and dealing with like doing things the right channels, and like email, so really the naivety of the sort of life of a like somewhat leisure and mostly creative is like a joke. I mean, like
Right.
maybe like Jeff Tweedy gets to do that, or like a few others who are really in a good place career wise get to do that. But the day to day of it is like a full time job. I mean, I think that yeah, there's a lot to be done.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So, how do you find that balance between kind of the business and the music? How do you find the balance between the two? Because one can kind of take over the other during certain times.
You're right, and I think that you have to be giving yourself challenges or ideas all the time. You have to experiment like a scientist. You know what I mean? And so like if you're in like California and you're a musician in California and you're like, okay, all I want to do for like 6 months is like play in Los Angeles around the area and see if I can build an audience. So you do that for 6 months. And you're like, okay, some people like me, but I feel like I'm playing too much. I'm like all over the place. They never know when they should come see me. So then
Hmm.
you're like, well, maybe I should go up to like Northern California. Maybe I should go to like Arizona, you know, these areas and like start like branching out. But maybe I should just do weekends. So you experiment like this until you find what works. And
Hmm.
at some point, like what works kind of finds you before that. And I think it's all about building an audience and not being worried about how big or small that audience is. Like if you were if you're releasing music and you're creating music that you really truly believe in and you know that it connects with somebody, it's just like the long game of like building those fans, those followers that will stick with you longer than they will if you're like a really cool splash of something that hits everywhere then disappears in a year or something.
Right.
So yeah, I think that you have to experiment with it, and there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, I don't think that everyone who plays music or writes or sings their own songs, I don't think that everybody should go out and play 200 shows a year. It's maybe not right for them. They'll know if it's right or not. You know,
Hmm.
their predicament, their day-to-day life will dictate a little bit of that too. And I'm not saying that that's the only thing to do, but like for me, I just like really loved connecting with an audience as much as I possibly could.
I can tell. I can tell that. Yeah, you know, even by the looks of your website, it's very intuitive. How do you stay engaged with your fans?
Um, I try not to annoy them as much as possible. I try to only just like put out stuff that people might like. Um, I try to only let them know when I'm playing areas that are near them. And maybe that's not the right thing. Maybe I should be annoying them at all costs and maybe hitting them up for Patreon. I'm not saying there's anything right or wrong with any of this stuff. I don't
Mhm.
know the answers. You know what I mean? And like, I just feel like people who like my music, we're always going to just have a drink at the show, or, you know, we can run into each other on the street and have a conversation. Like, it's like, I like knowing who knows what I do, and I never want to try to treat that relationship any different than it can be. So when I do these newsletters, you know, I try to make them funny. I try to make them honest, and you know, it always starts off with like something about it. Hey, I'm now here and I'm jet lagged, and the last few weeks were crazy. And it's like it's not just about like buy my album, do this, come to the show, you know. So I think it's important to kind of have like a realistic human relationship with obviously um, people who are happen to be human to, to like what you do. So yeah, I think that in short, I try to just annoy them as at least as possible.
But I could see that working well. I mean, it's not like you are trying to overdo it, and so your newsletters kind of talk about your life, almost like the YouTube video that
Hmm.
you know talks about you doing those shows in 2 years. It's just you kind of yeah, it's about the music too, but it's also giving them a window into your life, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I kind of like pride myself, but you know, I mean, like a musician that's been doing this for like 6 years full time. I'm away 7 months a year, you know, from my home, and like I really very quickly when I run into people that have been following me for a couple of years now, because their lives change. Everyone's life changes. Like you know, the years between sort of like 25 and 35, like change dramatically, right? I mean, like a lot of my friends now have kids. A lot of them have houses. Um, Some of them have 2 kids, some of them have like 3 kids. And so I don't think that, even though that I have kind of like somewhat an abnormal day-to-day lifestyle, I don't think that I'm that I don't think I'm unable to connect with their lives as well. And so being present and being kind of like a part of a community that is very diverse in the sense that everyone has kind of like different things going on. It's pretty pivotal to like to my place in this world. And yeah, I mean, there's I don't know. I mean, you kind of take these steps, or you create this kind of like code of conduct, this like coat of arms in a way that that you stick with, and I think that that kind of helps a lot.
That's great. That's great. So this new album, Solo, tell me more about it. How long did it take to record it? And
Mm. Well, so the way that I'm like, because again, kind of going back to this idea that I've been playing music and writing music and putting out music for a long time now. I mean, I guess it's like almost like 20 years if you think about like those like early high school punk band tapes to the kind of like early 20s like indie punk CDs and stuff, to kind of like coming into like an acoustic project a little later on in my 20s, and so like now my like sort of like mid 30s. It's like I've put out a lot of releases in a way, you know what I mean? There's a lot of songs that like are there. And so especially with my solo project,
Mhm.
every one of those releases is essentially recorded with somewhat of a band, because I come from a band perspective of running songs. How are the drums going to come in? Where's the guitar parts going to be sort of like complement each other? I've never left that alone. It's always been there. And when I start to think about the sort of like little body of work that I was creating with the solo albums, I realized there was nothing in there that was really truly like a solo record. Do you know what I mean? It was kind
Right.
of like
Still kind of a
it was
band
like
in some ways.
that's an extension of a band. So like I mean, I have this like I have this like amazing side of me that I think is I love comedy, I love humor, I just love life. I think life should be fun and funny, and you should make fun of yourself. And so, when I was thinking about, I had these songs, and I knew that as a challenge, I wanted to make an album that was going to be able to stand on its own 2 legs if it was just voice and instrument. And that was the thing that was missing the whole time. And so I really wanted to make like this, like, yeah, that was the rules of my challenge. And so when I started thinking about like names for the album, like I always just thought it was really funny if you called it solo record. It's like, it's like someone from this band that goes out and they do a solo record.
Right.
But yet I have like 4 of these things that are solo records. So it kind of just made me laugh, and it was the thing that stuck with me for more than a weekend. And yeah, therefore it kind of just made sense as the title.
Well, it's a great title, and I totally get what you're saying. It's more of a solo effort, than the other albums. So, Rob, tell me what's next on the horizon.
Well, the album only came out about 2 weeks ago, so I feel like, as you will, or as you do, I have about like 2 years of promotion for this. A lot in Europe, where that's the sort of place that takes me away the longest. Little bit of an easier logistical place to kind of get around when you're by yourself. I do have plans to do some, hopefully some shows. Well, I think they're going to come together. They're going to do some shows in Mexico in January, and Western Canada in January. Before that, February, I'll be back into more of the French-speaking part of Europe, France and French Switzerland and Belgium, also some Belgium. And I'm trying to get it together. I think it's going to happen to do some concerts. I hope, fingers crossed, in Morocco in March. I
Nice.
really want to go there anyways. And I found out, obviously, there are some cool little indie scenes going on in some cities. And so, I want to go there and play concerts. So I'm going to do a couple of those. And then I'll be back in March, April for some more Europe. And the real hope is to do some stuff in America, maybe as early as May, but possibly more realistically could be October as well. But it's the United States has always been that place that I feel like I've kind of ignored for a long time, because as a Canadian, you always have this like um, you have this belief that like you need something to like start happening in America before you
Mm.
should go down there, which I think is kind of bullshit. Like I think that like audiences are audiences everywhere, and America has like 330 plus million people that love music and all sorts of music, and like so there's this thing that like you're kind of told in the industry in Canada that like wait till you get a record deal, wait till you get this, and so I feel like I don't know. I don't believe it anymore. I feel like I just want to go down there and start playing shows and connecting with people. And so I hope that's going to happen as early as spring 2019. But the short answer would be lots of touring that's coming
Well,
up.
that would be awesome. We'd love for you to come to America. And you're right, 350 million music lovers. You got a place right here in the States for sure. So, Rob,
Absolutely, Jeff.
tell us where we can find you online.
RobMoir.com is the website, the sort of headquarters, but also most of my social media handles are Rob Moir Music, which is like ROBMOIR Music. And otherwise, there's lots of stuff on YouTube, some cool stuff. And I think that covers that side.
Awesome, awesome. Well, to the audience listening, I highly recommend Rob Moyer's new album, Solo. I've been checking it out. Like I said earlier, I really like I Recognize Nothing in Wolves, along with many other tracks from the album. It's a very, very solid album. Great production, great vocals, great writing by Rob. And Rob, I feel like there's so much more to do. We got to do a part 2. Would you be up
Let's
for
do
that
part
sometime?
2. Hell yeah, man. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, Rob, it's been an honor and a privilege having you on the Swagger Swerve Show. I wanted to say thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
I appreciate it. To the audience, the Swagger is about the creative and the Swerve is about the hustle. Clearly, Rob Moyer, that's what he has here. He's got a bit of both going on, and that's part of his thing. So it's a very inspiring thing to listen to this podcast. And until next time, everybody, keep up the hustle. Thank you.